The
illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
And I bet you all thought we weren't coming back. We did episode 400, which was a train wreck, and then nothing.
Yes, episode 400, version 1 was a disaster. It was a new experience for us, and
I will never let that down in my head. Like that'll go down as the worst experience of my life.
I literally feel like that was probably an omen that we should just end it, right?
In the podcast?
Yeah, maybe we should. Hey, I'm representing Exponential here, which I'm happy to do, but maybe Exponential doesn't want me to do that. So let me just put my living room back on there.
Maybe they should pay. That's all I'm saying.
Do you like my living room? Got my Bantha head on the wall there.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't notice it at first.
You didn't see that? Well,
I just thought you had a messy living room. I thought that was just like clothes hanging.
Here's my kitchen fireplace.
You're killing me.
Wrangler head on there. And just every once in a while in a meeting, I like to have the Rancor eating the Gamorrean guard. I was about to say Ugnaught. For some reason, I have a picture of Keanu Reeves riding on the back of a Bronco, but I don't get that one.
All I can say is my background fits the shirt. Huh? Did you see that?
Oh, no.
Were you paying attention?
Pay attention. What's your shirt? Well, I'm looking at my... Oh, that's cool. And that's that's from The Mandalorian, right? Is that the one where it crashes and he comes out with the Darksaber?
I have no idea.
Boom. Since we're talking church plantology stuff, I'll put my science background on.
I like it.
So those of you that don't know, I have a book. It's called, Pete loves it when I plug, Cha-ching! I have to, is your background animated? Look at that.
No.
Look at that. Mine is. Oh, yeah. I'm on the beach right now. Woo, it's windy. This is why we can't have nice things. Take off
most of the people listen to the podcast. They don't watch it on Facebook. They have no idea what we're doing.
We're actually changing our backgrounds as we speak. There's a Deftones. There we go. I'll be at the concert with Chino. So anyways, kind of where, I got a book coming out. Let's just say that. Cha-ching. It's called Plantology. Cha-ching. That's the rule. When you plug your book, you got to cha-ching it. So this is the first time of cha-ching Plantology. So episode 401, baby. It's a new hope. So I've got a new book coming out, Church Plantology. And it's on Amazon.
Wait. You've got a new book? I haven't heard about this.
I've got a new book, The Art and Science of Church Planting, my good fellow. And it's on Amazon, so you can pre-order it now. But just be aware, it's a textbook. It's not like $9. It's a little bit more.
What are they charging for it?
I don't remember, but it's a lot of money because it's big. It's huge. So here, let's look it up real quick. Only professionalism on this podcast. I should know the price.
Well, you're not the publisher, so, I get it.
I'm not going to make any money off it. Well, if you buy it on Kindle, it's $2.99.
Nice.
And it looks like it can't be getting an audiobook. It says this audiobook could be released on March 16th. I can't picture this is going to have an audiobook.
I like it.
I wonder if I get paid if I do my own audio. Hey, I like that picture.
Yeah?
Yeah, Charlie Marquez sent me a postcard
about that one.
Church planting. You did not do that on our podcast. That's terrible.
Come on.
Get that off there.
That's funny.
Terrible. No, that's terrible. Get that off there. You can't have that on a church planning podcast. I'm ashamed.
Finally.
Took me long enough. There we go. Yeah, Charlie Marquez sent me that picture of, that's not animated. Does nothing for me.
No.
All right, we'll get back. For those of you who listen to the podcast, we apologize. That was a waste of your time. But let me tell you what's not a waste of your time.
So by the way, you still been taking the Sharpie to your arm every day?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, every day I retrace it. I get it back on there. So, yeah, and this one, too, with Lord of the Rings.
Is that what that was? I couldn't remember what you said.
Mountain.
I couldn't remember what you said that was.
A dragon up top in Lonely Mountain. It's even got the keyhole, but you can't see it. But it's pretty cool. So, I
told Jamie that I was going to do Star Wars.
Yeah.
On my my arm. I'm like, Peyton got a tattoo, so I should be able to get a tattoo. She actually thought it was a good idea.
Oh.
To get the Rebel emblem. The only thing is, I'm too afraid that they're going to keep screwing up Star Wars, and then I'd be like ashamed.
That is a problem. Anything can happen with Star Wars right now.
I knew this guy who was so into Star Wars back in college that before the Phantom Menace came out, he had already had Darth Maul tattooed on himself. And I always thought, what a letdown that must have been when Darth Maul died at the end of Phantom Menace.
Heck yeah, man.
Because it wasn't until recently that they brought him back to life.
Yeah. Well, in the Clone Wars cartoon,
that's what I mean.
Ago.
Recently, they brought him back.
Yeah, it's true. I remember being blown away when I found out that he had a spider robot lower half with his normal Darth Maul torso up top. That was kind of a shock. So when it happened in Han Solo, I didn't get the full shock value of what. But from what I understand, people that knew him from the cartoon, they thought it was cool. But people who didn't know about the cartoon are like, what? He's back.
Really?
What did you? That's stupid. Because they're like, you chopped him in half. Yeah, like people are upset. But hey, if the Emperor can fall down a pit and still live, so can Darth Maul cut in half. Right?
But see, I don't really think the Emperor could. I think that was just bad Star Wars lore there.
It is. And what's to keep him from coming back now, right?
The only one who can die are good guys, pretty much.
How does the Emperor not come back from this again, right? Like he's in a Sith temple. Don't tell me that he can't just absorb himself back. It's just going to be a never-ending Emperor Palpatine.
That's the reason why I can't get the Star Wars tattoo. I'm too afraid that it's just going to keep getting bad and bad and bad.
There are all kinds of weird rumors going around right now. They're going to reboot that franchise. They're going to redo the sequel.
I know. That's what I heard.
Trip.
I they need to. Funny.
They need to redo it. They need to give us what... I mean, look, I'll always take Star Wars. I mean, I get mad at them, but it's a low bar. If it's Star Wars, it's always automatically better than Star Trek. And I'm happy, it's like, well, but other than that, we're left with Star Trek. So
they invented the lightsaber. That'll always make them tops.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so back to church plantology, Pete. Okay. Guess how much?
Wait. You've got a book? You've got a book?
Got a book.
Tell us about this book.
It's called Church Plantology, The Art and Science of Planting Churches by Peyton Jones III, Esquire. I just put that on there because the academic textbook, you got to put fancy things. I don't have a PhD.
True or not, doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. And I could say Dr. Peyton Jones, right? Like, I mean, I did.
This is the day and age at which facts no longer matter.
It's my chosen personal pronoun, doctor. That is what I will be called from now on. Dr. Peyton Jones.
It's my chosen personal pronoun. That's the best.
No, well, it is the best. It's a two-edged sword, baby. And so we got Peyton Jones, Church Plantology, The Art and Science of Planting Churches. How much, Pete? Let's bid on it. Okay, this is a game show.
I'm going to say 48. 48.
Ooh, that would have been better. No, you're a little high, Pete. You're a little high.
Then I have no idea.
For what's behind door number 2, do you want to revise your answer?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, it's $34.99.
That's not expensive.
It can't be $50.
That's
for a book. But it's hardcover. $34.99. But a fat little Kindle, $22.99. 400 and something pages. That's a big book.
I guess so. You're really proud of it, aren't you?
I'm pretty proud of it. I'm even
Well,
prouder
didn't
of
you
the
say
fact
you
that
did-
I rate 800 pages.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't you like have like another book left over?
I did, and I do.
What are you gonna do with that one?
Well, I'm not allowed to tell Andrea this, but I want it to be Plantology 201, and she's not too thrilled on that. But I have plans. I have plans. I want to go deeper into those subjects with what had to be cut out, because really it had to be a basic starting level church planning book. But I think it's meaty. I mean, the academic editor, their senior editor, is on her. I was like, whoa. She literally said, wow, you know your stuff. They read it. Both editors have been super complimentary towards it. So I think it's an okay book, because when you're writing an academic book and you don't got that PhD, there's some insecurity. I had an academic short man syndrome, and there were times I'm like, hey, dude, stop trying to be academic. In fact, I have a writers group called the Inklings. And they were telling me often, they're like, hey, stay Peyton Jones. So at a certain point, I had decided, am I going to write to the professor, or am I going to write to the student? And I started writing to the student and found my voice again.
See, I really wonder, what do they do with a church planting textbook? Because you got to get a teacher to actually make that part of the syllabus.
Yes.
And that means, well, first of all, there aren't that many Christian schools, and there are even less that have anything to do with church planning. And then you got to find those teachers, and there's going to be just a few of them that say, yeah, we think you ought to.
Oh, totally. I mean, some people will see that there's no PhD there, and they'll be like, right? Because Paul had a PhD. So did Peter. So, that's important. But so did Wesley, by the way. He did have his MDiv. But here's the thing. And I do. I have my MA theology, not quite an MDiv, but I have that. So, but, again, intellectual short man syndrome. Hey, here's what they asked for: a practitioner textbook. That's what I gave them. So it's not an academic textbook, even though it's in their academic. It's a practitioner textbook. But anyways, the point of all this is you can pre-order it now. It releases on March 16th. That's the day before St. Patrick's Day, isn't it?
I don't know, but I told you I'm not buying because I'm not mentioned.
You are mentioned in the acknowledgments.
I don't think I am. I think if anything, I think you said you were going to use my name as like a villain in one of your stories.
No, what I said is in the acknowledgments, I say typically acknowledgments are reserved for when you thank others. But in this case, I would just like to give a shout out to Pete Mitchell, who with my help has worked so hard to get in ultimate shape. And so I reverse the acknowledgement. And
that would actually make me proud. That would make me proud enough to frame the book if that were true.
That's so good. Oh, it's good.
What have you been doing, man? You've been gone for 3 weeks. Where you been?
I've been camping. I did RV share, which is you go online and you borrow someone's RV, you rent it from them.
It's Airbnb for RV.
It is, and it was a really good experience. We had so much fun. We went with Chris Langham from Through the Word.
Nice.
Up to, by the way, did I mention that my peace plan was on YouVersion on front page?
I don't even know what that means.
I did it. They're doing these things called Bible Basics, 3-part series. Anyways, if you open up the Bible app, it's been front and center. I don't know if it is today, but over the last few weeks, it's been the peace plan, and they've had like an insane amount of downloads and memberships. Nice. So Through the Word's a Bible app. Sorry, I know this is all commercial. I'm not meaning this to be commercials, but I went with Chris Langham, and it was supposed to be a Through the Word trip where we're walking and hiking and filming videos and stopping along the way. But it was so deathly hot, and I had the Dobie puppy, Abby, and so I took her back to the motorhome, fired up the old AC, and was like, so long, Through the Word. But they were heading up further north. We were at Pinnacles National Park, and all the caves were closed because of COVID, because there's bats in there. I don't ask. So,
well, are you going to eat them?
I guess they were going to poop on us and give us COVID. So
you only get it from eating bats.
Oh, well, you can't rule out the possibility. I mean, you
is it bat season?
Have you seen that meme that says scientists yesterday And it's things like, we're going to go to Mars, and we're going to build a space station, and we're going to discover life on new planets. And then they go, scientists today, no, the Earth is not flat.
Yes, I have seen
Masks
that.
will help you. And it was so funny. I was like, oh, and vaccines are healthy. It was so funny. And then the guy wrote, tough days to be a scientist. But basically, I mean, yeah, who knows what people do. So anyways, we said sayonara, went to a place called Big Basin, which is just south of what's on your screen there, south of San Fran, the little peninsula that makes up the basin. South of San Fran, the opening of the bay, there's a redwood forest there I did not know about. It was originally called the California State Redwood Forest. It is incredible.
Really?
And we went and stayed there. Not many people know about it.
I lived my whole life there, and I've never been there.
Nobody knows about Big Basin. In fact, we were able to get a spot, and it was just like going to the Redwoods, but it was an hour away from Pinnacles. So we're like, oh, this is a win. So we told the Langhams, hey, you guys go on without us. We're we'll see you later. But I was going to say, what ended up happening was we went to, from there, we came home. We were back for one day to unpack and repack. I worked another day at Exponential, and then drove right back up north to the east side of Yosemite and camped out at Silver Lake, which was pretty rad. And we did all kinds of cool things, man. It was neat.
That's cool.
We go there every year.
My wife won't camp, so.
Well, you got a glamp. We had a trailer dropped off.
She won't do an RV either.
Oh,
she's not doing that. We went to Lake Las Vegas, which is our annual getaway, and it was hot. It was 115 degrees.
I saw you in Vegas, and I was like, that Vegas and Pete don't seem to mix.
Oh, no, totally. I'd move there if I could.
Why don't you come to Carlsbad, go to Legoland, and we'll hang out? Because your kids think it's lame now, huh?
No, first of all, I don't have passes anymore. And secondly, the COVID.
Oh, yeah. There is that little thing. Legoland's probably closed. That's true.
I don't know.
Vegas is not closed, is it?
They opened up part of Legoland. That's what I heard.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
So, but
Vegas was funny in that the governor's order was you had to wear masks in stores. Right. And so every store, because all we do is we go to the malls, right? We don't gamble or anything like that.
Right.
And all of the benches say the bench is closed due to COVID-19. And everyone's still sitting on the bench because they're like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. We can't sit because of COVID-19.
That's funny.
So, and then in Henderson, because that's where Lake Las Vegas is. That's where we were at. I don't know if it's a county of Henderson or city of Henderson. I have no idea. They closed spas. Like you couldn't be in a jacuzzi because of COVID-19. You could be in the pool, but not in the jacuzzi.
Whoa.
So apparently,
even though heat kills the virus, right?
Well, apparently chlorine only kills it in the pool. It won't kill it in a jacuzzi.
Oh, you know why? Because of the 6-foot thing.
Yeah, that's what we figured.
Together, yeah.
So we, of course, just ignored that and went in the jacuzzi anyway.
Wow.
Because that's how my family roll.
Yeah, man.
Train up your kids right.
Well, I don't know, man. I'm at a place right now where after being gone for 2 weeks and being out in the wilderness, that was definitely the COVID holiday of choice.
Really?
Oh, we weren't around anybody. It was great. So yep. Nobody telling you what to do. Nobody, which I don't mind, but I mean, I'll say this. It always weirds me out that you go into the restaurant with your mask on and just while you're going through the front door, and then you go sit at your table, and then they're like, hey, it's safe now. We're not going to carry the virus from, the waitress to you. I mean, they're all wearing masks, but it's weird to me. It's really weird to me. I don't mind.
There was an article that the Wisconsin, I think it was like their health department, put out a memo to all their employees that they're required to wear a mask even on Zoom calls.
Really?
People are deranged.
Even on Zoom calls.
People are deranged.
Wow.
They are literally out of their minds.
Well, they are. I mean, I always tell people that, remember, the basic assumption about people is that we're stupid. I mean, there's a reason God had to unpack the law in great detail. Instead of, he could have just said what Jesus said at the beginning: love your neighbor, love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. You fulfill those, you've kept all the law. I'll save you a bunch of time, a bunch of ink and parchment. But people are stupid. So when I was going through Leviticus, if you remember it through the word, I was like, hey, look, this is because we're stupid. God had to unpack that and spell out. So if you're walking in the field and your neighbor's cow falls in the pit, you got to help them. Like, that's how stupid we are. And God had to spell it out. So I think God thinks we're stupid. And I know we're stupid. So I know that God knows we're stupid. We're stupid.
Stupid people.
Yeah. Well, everybody except for me and you, Pete.
Well, at least me.
I ain't speaking for you, man.
Dude, all I know is your daughter is my favorite person on the planet.
Yes. She, I texted Pete that she was looking at Facebook. She saw a picture of Pete on Facebook, and she goes, Dad, Pete Mitchell's fitter than you. And I had nothing. I couldn't argue. I'm like, that's right, babe. He sure is. I am now Pete's fat friend. I predicted this. You'll remember, podcast listeners, I predicted one day people will be like, oh, Peyton Jones, Pete Mitchell's fat friend. Yeah.
It's so funny, man. I literally had to Facebook that. I was like, this is hilarious. I got to put this one up.
Pete sends me pictures of him flexing his muscles. He does.
But I'm smart enough not to put those on Facebook.
On a loop. He'll send me pictures of him flexing. And
that was the best. It's all.
But seriously, like, homeboy's got some striations going on in those muscles. It's impressive. I gotta say, it's actually impressive. I'm like, dude,
it's all Photoshop, right? Baby. It's all Photoshop.
Well, I used to work out pretty hardcore when I was younger, and
you were doing the Sean T stuff not that long ago.
Oh gosh, yes, that was the best shape I've been in since I was back that age. But I used to go to the gym every day. I would eat. I would read all the muscle and fitness magazines. I would stretch like mad. I would do all that stuff. My diet was super honed. Like, I used to be super into that, and I would try to get shredded. And then I kind of went, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then so. I don't know, man. So when I see you doing it, I'm like, oh, he's doing that right for sure. Then the results.
I don't know if I've shown you, but I actually have a home gym now since all the gyms closed. I was like,
I've seen it in many of the pictures in the background.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
He'll send me these things like, don't miss leg day.
Oh, dude, it's the best,
you become that guy.
Oh, totally. 100%. I've decided I'm going to let my Instagram account become that account. And so like on Instagram, that's where all the pictures go.
Motivation Monday. You're going to be doing that soon. But nothing wrong with that. To be honest, I'm super proud of you, man. That has taken a ton of work and dedication. And I got big respect for that because I ain't doing it. As my daughter pointed out. So
yeah, well, I still got goals for where I want to get to. I don't think I can get there at this point without drastic changes that I'm not necessarily willing to do. So
yeah. Well, everybody kind of has their place where they go, okay, I'm cool, I'm good. I think I'm good where I'm at. Hey, this is my new office. Can you see it?
I can actually.
Do you like?
I was like, I don't think that's a picture because why would you have a picture of just like wood?
This is all that banging and hammering that's been going on for a long time. So that's it.
Don't let them put walls up.
No, walls are.
That's what we call an open floor plan.
Oh yeah. I can, hey kids, I can see you. Stop that. I can see through the entire house. And yeah. Check this out. I'm not kidding
though. I use you as my excuse to Jamie as to why I need to be allowed to get a tattoo. And right there is where I've always wanted one. Right where you got yours.
Yeah, right there.
On the forearm.
Can't get a job. I'm unemployable now. And boom, right there. So can't get a job. If I ever go back into nursing, I have to wear long sleeve shirts, and that will be a punishment. Skin's got to breathe. So, all right. Well, hey, should we go ahead and get into our little...
Great, Scott. It's time for this week's topic. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, baby. So what we're going to do today, I think last time we talked about some of Paul's foundations of where he, where his rookie mistakes is what we talked about. And today we're going to talk about some of Paul's foundational wisdom in church planning. So, Paul makes the statement where he says, I laid a foundation and now others are building on it. And as he talks about it, he's really, at one point he says, I laid a foundation like a wise and master builder. So Paul saw, when he thought of church planting, and look, when you write a book on church planting, you talk a lot about, you read a lot about church planting, and almost to a T, every church planting book I picked up, the author would be like, well, there's nothing about church planting in the Bible, and as if they were saying something profound. But here's the deal. Anywhere there was a church, it was a church plant. I mean, that's still true today, but I mean, these were young church plants. So the old saying that the fish is the last one to notice the water, of course the New Testament doesn't talk about church planting, because churches were church plants. Like, they were just churches to them, right? There was no distinction, because there weren't old churches. There was only church plants. So they just called that church, right? So even though there's not like this, I always find it weird. I'm like, okay, that's great. You think you're being profound, but you're being kind of lame here, because the fish is the last one to notice the water. But Paul said, I did it like a wise and master builder when he was with the Corinthians. Now, we know that was his second missionary journey. So we talked last episode that Paul made tons of mistakes. And I didn't unpack all the mistakes. I didn't even unpack all the lessons he learned from his first 3 journeys. But Paul knew he was not the architect, right? Paul knew he was the contractor. He was the foundation layer. Others would come and build. He knew he had his role. I lay this, I leave the church behind, others come and build on it. But I am carrying out the plans of the chief architect, manifesting his thoughts into reality. So, like all of us, I mean, Paul says, I built like a wise and master builder. I mean, I've had a whole slew of contractors coming and going in my house, but you don't start off that way. I mean, you start off not knowing what you're doing. You start off as a journeyman and you apprentice under somebody else. So Paul apprenticed to a certain degree when he went to Antioch for a year, and just witnessed what God was doing when there was no leadership. They sent Barnabas up there, Jerusalem did, and then Paul goes with him, because he's like, well, Barnabas, train. Closer to the train now. So Paul goes up with him, and Barnabas is taking the lead, and Paul's learning. He's watching what's happening in a movement, in a spirit-led church plant that's being led completely by non-leaders, right? These were just people from Jerusalem, got scattered. The Bible tells us they got scattered up north to Antioch and during the persecution, and that the gospel spread all throughout that region. Then it tells you that many were coming to faith in Antioch. And so then the apostles send Barnabas up there, and Paul learns that, right? He learns that. But, if you're looking at a foundation layer, like I laid a foundation in my house, I had the foundation layer, he doesn't just dig a hole and pour cement in it. He says, where are the blueprints? There's a schematic drawing of the measurements and even the alignment of the foundation to, north, south, east, and west. There's degrees. It's got to be aligned to a certain degree. And there's, it's got to be this deep. The mixture has to be this much. So there are plans and blueprints. And that's what Paul's saying, is he's saying, there's an architect. and I'm following his plan, and I'm doing it. So one of the things that you'll notice when you listen to this podcast is we're always talking about first century blueprints. We're always talking about what Paul did. But what were Paul's blueprints? If Paul was the first century planter, what was he following? So there's three things that I would give you that Paul used to help inform him. Because remember, he was a journeyman. He made tons of mistakes. But how did Paul learn? What?
I was just looking at DJ's comment on Facebook. You put, don't miss leg day, like fried chicken.
He's still going on about your health.
I just now looked at it. I just now saw
That's funny. That's funny. Do you have that? Do you have a fried chicken day?
Every day is fried chicken day.
Yeah, baby. Are you on that diet? Yeah, you're on the carnivore diet, right?
I'm not on the carnivore diet like I was. You have to listen to that episode of the From Concealment podcast.
I plan on it. It's
no,
on my
I'm
list.
serious. It's one of those things that I could not in a million years bring over to the Church Planner podcast.
Thank you.
But it is like, I had so many, because we got so many pastors who listen to that podcast because they all heard about it from this one. And they're like, one, he literally Facebooks me and he goes, just so you know, I already told my wife I was going on the carnivore diet. It had nothing to do with your podcast, because once you hear it, you will totally get it. It's hilarious.
That's funny. Well, all right. So I'll give that a listen. But okay, so back to Paul's blueprints. What were his blueprints? Number one, he had the Old Testament. Now, I know that sounds weird. You think, whoa, wait a second. It's the New Testament, not the Old Testament. So how did Paul use the Old Testament to church plant? Well, hold on. I'm not done. Number two, he had the gospel blueprints. In other words, he trained under Gamaliel. Gamaliel was familiar with Jesus' ministry. Acts 22, verse 3, we're told that he's trained under him. And Gamaliel appears in the book of Acts, when the apostles are just getting started. So he was part of the Sanhedrin. But Paul studied under that dude. And he studied and imitated the life of Gamaliel. And so he knew what it was to imitate a rabbi. Well, Jesus was considered a rabbi. So Paul would have taken his understanding of what it is to follow a rabbi under Gamaliel, and he would have applied that to Jesus. He would have seen Jesus as the new rabbi. Gamaliel's world famous, historically famous, still quoted today in Jewish circles. Super, super famous. His son was famous, but Jesus was Paul's new rabbi. So Paul would have been asking Barnabas, who was there during Jesus's ministry. He would have tried to figure out from as many people as possible what Jesus said and did, and he would have followed Jesus as his rabbi. Number three, his practical experiences. So as Paul, it's trial and error. As Paul was planting on his first and second missionary journey, he was making mistakes and he learned. So anything you want to say?
No.
Oh, okay. So Paul's application, so let's deal with number one, the Old Testament and his blueprints, the Old Testament blueprints. So Paul was never, his knowledge of the Old Testament was so thorough that even when he was doing New Testament ministry, he's constantly drawing from Old Testament principles. He never gets away from that. So, for example, Paul quotes Deuteronomy 25:4 about treating an oxen well. We were just talking about the law because we're stupid. And Paul talks about paying ministers, and he quotes this thing about don't muzzle the ox while he treads a grain. So Paul right there is applying an Old Testament passage about oxen, extrapolating the principle and applying it to ministry in a church planting context. And he even writes in Timothy, do I say this from a human perspective? Doesn't the law say the same thing? For it is written in the law of Moses, do not muzzle an ox while it's treading out the grain. Is it about oxen that God is concerned? Isn't he actually speaking on our behalf? Indeed, this was written for us. Sorry, that's 1 Corinthians 9. So for Paul, passages even about livestock apply to how people treat human beings. Paul's like, well, if God cares about oxen, so we can take that principle out. So to me, that is super, super fascinating that Paul's constantly interacting with Old Testament scriptures. to figure out how to do ministry in the New Testament context, which kind of tells you if we want to follow suit, we also can take Old Testament principles and, surprise, surprise, New Testament principles. And if Paul was doing that in his context of the Testament he had, maybe we ought to be applying it, New Testament principles to what we're doing, which will not be at variance with Old Testament principles. That's kind of it. There's a continuity there. Also, when Paul talks about laying the foundation, he's actually speaking about the temple. So you can read various passages about laying a foundation stone, like Isaiah 28:16. See, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation. The one who relies on it will never be stricken with panic. And of course, Paul says later, after he says, I lay a foundation, others are building on it. I like a wise and master builder. Right in that same passage, he says, for no man can lay any other foundation than the one that was already laid, namely Christ. So what Paul sees himself doing when he's church planting is he's really laying the foundation of Jesus in a local area. He's not using the foundation as being, here, I'm going to build this church structure and this organization. He's saying, I am going to put a Christ presence here, Christ himself here. Everything else will be built on top of him, right? That's a little bit of a departure from how we think about it. But he's literally taken that from Isaiah, and he clarifies, I don't mean I'm building a building. I don't mean I'm building an institution. I mean, I'm laying the foundation of Jesus himself here, which is pretty rad. So, whenever you see foundation laying in the Old Testament as well, you see that it's linked with the Holy Spirit. So Paul, obviously, in Proverbs 8:28, when it says, I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed the foundations of the deep, when he says, I laid a foundation like a wise and master builder, his mind's going to Proverbs. Like the dude just knew the scripture so well that I think personally, he's going back when he says, I did it with wisdom. He's literally bleeding, like Spurgeon said, bibline blood. You prick him, he bleeds bibline blood type. So he says, I laid it wisely, because Proverbs, that famous chapter 8 passage is about God laying the foundation of the earth with wisdom at his right hand. Wisdom saying, I was there. He laid it with my wisdom. And also, there's so much here. I'm going to skip ahead. The mission mandate of the Old Testament. Paul was using that from the Old Testament. So, for example, kingdom expansion, when God said, be fruitful and multiply to Adam and Eve, Paul's mind's on that. He knows that the mandate has never changed from creation to when Jesus makes the new creation. He knows that God always, his plan was to spread out and multiply, to be fruitful and multiply. Paul applies that to the New Testament context, that we are to be fruitful and multiply. In Habakkuk, even after the fall, because we were like, well, that was before the fall. After the fall, the mission of God on earth is seen in Habakkuk 2:14. And it says, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And so that was the original intention, that because man glorified God, he was in his image. To glorify God means to proclaim him. And Adam and Eve naturally did that because they were in God's image. So they radiated his glory off themselves. The more of them there were, the more and they spread out and covered the globe, the more of God's glory would cover the earth through Adam and Eve, just having sex, having kids, right? Making more of them. More children meant more of the image of God covering the face of the earth. So when Paul sees that in a New Testament context, he sees it and he quotes this, that the glory of the Lord will cover the earth. He quotes this later and he keeps speaking about Christ's glory and God's glory. So that was the mission mandate of the Old Testament. But Paul also knows that it's global. It's not just Israel. Like you read the Old Testament, Israel's kingdom expands, but Paul understood enough of the Old Testament where you're reading Isaiah and God says, this is going to go out to all nations. When I do this new thing, it will go to all nations. So hardwired into the Old Testament is the idea that everything that God is doing in Israel will one day cover the earth. And of course, that's the day and age we live in, the fulfillment of that biblical prophecy of the prophets. And meanwhile, understand that when these prophecies were being made to Isaiah and Jeremiah, they were losing. They were losing. They were in danger of being annihilated. And God is saying, don't worry, I'm going to do this new thing, and I'm going to cover the earth with my glory. And so Paul had this kind of confidence that it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter that the Roman Empire is just steamrolling the Western world. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that the Middle East has just been trounced and trampled. Doesn't matter. God, when they were losing, promised this, and it's happening. He sent his son into this time. So now we come into our day and age, and we got to have that same confidence. It doesn't matter like what people tell you, right? Like right now I'm reading all these things, the church has to change if it's going to survive or this or that. No, it doesn't. The church needs to keep preaching the gospel that Paul preached. It needs to keep doing what it's done. Now, I'm not saying it keeps behaving the way it's always behaved. I'll say it keeps the structures it's always had. But what I'm saying is the answer is not to change the message of the gospel. The answer is to preach the gospel all the more. If we're going to survive, it's the preaching of the gospel. It's always led to the survival of the church. And that's what Paul did. Paul just knew. The global mission of the Old Testament is seen even way back in Genesis 12:3, where God says to Abraham, I'll bless you, and through you, I will bless the entire world. And God spoke prophetically to foreigners like Balaam, who is a prophet, a pagan prophet, who saw in Numbers 24:17 God's glory. There's my favorite passage out of the entire Pentateuch is when Balaam is, he's Balaam's donkey, he's a false prophet. He's been sent by King Balak to curse Moses and the armies of Israel. And so he's on this ledge, and Balak is there behind him going, curse him, go on, curse him. And he goes, okay, here he goes. And he starts to give the prophecy. And my favorite one is in, because he does it 3 times, and each time he blesses them. He can't help it because the unction and the oracle comes upon him. And whereas this guy was a pagan, he's probably normally just, demonically influenced. At this point, the Spirit of the Lord, it says the Spirit of the Lord comes on him and he blesses the people. And Balak gets mad at him. On his 3rd time, he says this, and it's really powerful. He says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. That gives me chills, right? Because I see him, but not now. Like there's this messianic prophecy. It's the 3rd one. It's the big one. And Balak just finally says, forget it. You're done. Right. And, but he sees the Messiah. Now that prophecy, by the way, Balaam was from Babylon. So not only was Balaam's prophecy there, as an oracle, but the Babylonian wise men through Daniel also, if you remember, was a wise man in Babylon. That was his role. He was the chief wise man. He was the chief magi, so to speak. Of course, he got his oracles from God and was God's representative and a prophet. But he was there to be the king's oracle. And so what happens is when Daniel sees all these, he sees again, remember the same prophecy, he sees the star coming from heaven. And when he sees that, he says, hey, I'm doing a podcast here, babe. Oh, cool. That's rad. Wonderful. They're telling me, see, I'm the coffee slave. They're telling me, go get mommy coffee. Tell mommy that the coffee is made. It's there. So anyways, that's how it rolls in the Jones house. So anyways, so there's a star. And the star that Balaam sees, Daniel sees the same thing. He sees this meteorite coming from heaven that strikes the statues. And he says, and that kingdom will dominate, will conquer all the other kingdoms, and it will have no end. It will be eternal. That is the everlasting kingdom and the everlasting king. So when you see that, then the Magi, when they come in the New Testament, they say, where's the king? For we have seen his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him. So that's the connection. Often at Christmas time, we totally don't even get this thread that God was working in these other nations, these pagan nations, way earlier, right? To get the gospel out. Paul sees this. So like when Paul goes in to Athens and he walks through the city and he looks at their pagan statues, Paul's such a scholar of the Old Testament as a Pharisee. He knows God is at work in that. Now that he understands the gospel, he knows God is at work in foreign nations. He's already beat me there. So here he's there, and I'm going to preach this unknown God to you because you know about him. You just don't know what to call him. And so that was Paul's kind of whole missionary approach, is he's already here. God's already laid the framework. And of course, any of you that are students of missiology and you read, books on missiology, even I've never read Henry Blackaby's book, but I've read so many quotes, and everybody tells me that his whole thing is get involved in what God's already doing, church planner, in your neighborhood. God's already at work there. And I can remember learning that personally, and I've told the story a million times. I showed up in that woman's house, and presence of God was so thick you could cut it with a knife because she'd been reading her Al-Anon book. That lady came to faith, got baptized with the Holy Spirit, was just crazy filled with the Spirit. Another woman, she was a Buddhist. She had a vision of Jesus in her garage while she's hammering, like all these supernatural things. And that was God teaching me, hey, dude, Peyton, I'm here. I beat you here. You didn't get here. You didn't bring me here. I was already here working. And that was so transformative to me as a missionary. It changed everything, even Long Beach. The one day that we're looking and doing like a prayer fast, not a prayer walk, but a prayer drive through the city. There's this black gospel choir in this park, and we stopped, and everyone in the car is crying, and because they're like, that's it, that's where we gotta meet, Bixby Park. And I'm going, dang it, I don't want to meet there, but it was obvious. I knew this is God. So Paul kind of knew that God, he understood the global call to the nations. And more than anyone, I would say, when Paul is a Pharisee, it's not an accident that God used a Pharisee, because Paul would have known the Old Testament so well. The Jews puzzled often like, well, maybe when the Messiah comes, he'll force everyone to bow the knee. And then the whole world will serve and worship God. And then we will take this, just like the Romans, the Pax Romana, the Pax of Christi, it will dominate the world because Jesus will make them. And Paul says, yeah, that's true. Every tongue confess, every knee will bow, but that's much later. That's not God's plan. God's plan wasn't to take the world by force. God's plan was to fill the earth with his glory by us being fruitful and multiplying. The mission mandate hasn't changed. The global scope has not changed. What's changed is it's to be done through the church. And Ephesians really kind of unpacks that theologically. But even going back, like Paul would have understood, even the very first book written in the prophets was the book of Noah, where he's told to go to the Assyrians, the enemies that wiped out Israel, who were barbaric and tortured people and invented crucifixion. And he was told to go to them and share the gospel. He doesn't want to, because he's like, that's like going to the Nazis. No way. They're evil. They're too evil for your grace. But God goes, no, you got to go to them. They're one of the nations I love, and I'm going to reach. So the very first Old Testament prophetic book in the category of the prophets written was the book of Jonah. And it's a global missionary book. And it's a book about global missions. And so, Paul knows all this, and he's studying. And when he goes, and I'm going to close here, but when Paul goes to Arabia, and he spends those years studying when he's back in Tarsus and Arabia and Samaria. He's studying all these, and he's trying to piece together, I believe, what he knew of the Old Testament and how that coincided with Christ coming as the Messiah, not in force, but in submission to the Father, but also submitting himself to the hands of men, which made no sense to any Jew. But as Paul's going away and he's mulling that over, he knows that, as Jesus said to him in Acts 27, when he appeared to him, think of Jesus' words in this context: I will rescue from your own people and from the Gentiles. I am sending you to them to open their eyes. So that's pretty amazing. So Paul knew that. So, sorry, that was, I didn't get very far in my, but I hope you enjoyed that today. What's
the takeaway you want people to take from that?
I want people to take away, I think at the bottom line, I would say to read the Old Testament and love the Old Testament and apply it to your situation, extract the principles like Paul did. And see that as these are for today. It's like when they go to Peter, hey, what is this with the Holy Spirit? And he goes, oh, that's what Joel spoke about, the unlocking of everyone's gifts through the Holy Spirit. That's what's happening here. Like, we don't read the Old Testament through those eyes and apply these gems and nuggets. We would never exposit like they did. I always felt like I remember my New Testament exegesis professor, he had a topic called the New Testament apostles, bad exegetes, ? Because, the way they use the Old Testament scriptures. And yet, Alex Laminaggio, who is a New Breed church planner, he posted about the patristic fathers, like the pre and post-Nicenes, and then the anti-Nicenes, or the pre's, and then the Nicenes. Those church fathers, as we call them, they very much read the scripture this way. And he just posted on New Breed's Facebook group, which is a network I run. He just posted an article about that and said, man, this transformed the way. And I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at to a certain degree. It's all in the book. So, but yeah, that's as we continue to move towards our relaunch of how to plant churches. We're still in the theory part. We're still in the foundation laying part. We're still kind of getting you to think about it, I think, right before we talk about the practical side. So, yeah, while you're thinking about all that church planning, Pete, and laying all those foundations, you don't have time to run your bookkeeping, your office administration, all that kind of stuff. Pete, what do you do about that?
Well, usually it involves fraud.
Don't say that. Definitely don't ever make a joke on email when the merchant account is on the line and talk about how you committed fraud.
Oh my gosh.
The church bank's account. They may just close you off in the merchant account and notify the authorities.
Let's also say that don't email Pete when he has nothing to do with your church anymore and include him in on it. Like, you don't want him on it. Let's just leave it like that.
That's funny.
Until then, I use simplifychurch.com.
That's rad. Well,
simplifychurch.com.
And I'm not just a client. I'm the president. No, I actually have been using Simplify Church for many moons. I think since 2013 or 14. Right?
Whenever they started advertising, that would be about the time.
Which was probably 2013 or 14. I mean, it's been a long time. So I am a long-term member. If they pulled this ad out today, I'd probably pay for their services because they are just awesome. So go on over, give them a call. A lot of it is the IRS compliancy. And now that you've just done all your taxes, just know that's a big deal. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? I tried to mask it. I burped. I was giving them a great commercial and I had to mute a burp,
You're killing me, Smalls.
Yeah,
we're such a professional podcast.
And it was a good ad. And then the fates just decided, nope, can't have a good ad for Simplified Church. I'm going to give you a little gas. And boom, just had to choke that burp down mid-sentence.
Well, let's just head on over to simplifychurch.com, reach out to Josh Henry, and tell him Pete and Peyton sent you.
Yep. And our commercials are part of the best part of this podcast for that very reason. So if you want to sponsor the Church Planner podcast, just, send an email right on over. All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining us today. It's been Peyton and Pete reminding you that Pete has awesome guns, but also on top of that, and I'm not talking about the kind he takes a shooting range. I'm talking about the kinds he's,
But they are awesome. The ones I take to the shooting range. I'm
talking about the guns you have when you don't need your guns. That's what I'm talking
which way to the gym?
All right. Well, hey, this has been Peyton and Pete reminding you, if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplannerpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planner Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplannermagazine.com.